welcome everybody. We're so glad to have you here, and we're honored to have Katie Bailey with us. First of all, if you don't know who I'm Executive Vice President at Mortarstone, and I handle a lot of our partnerships and relationships we have with larger churches, and then also partners that we work with that serve churches and church networks. And then I do some of our training and coaching for churches that we work with in a coaching relationship as well. So I'm honored to have Katie with us. I met Katie at Christian Stewardship Network a few years ago, and I've seen her at different events and asked her if she'd be willing to do this with us. And she graciously said she'd love to. She loves to help churches, and we've been in some breakouts together in past events and conferences, and it's always a lot of fun to work with her. So Katie Bailey is with NewSpring Church in South Carolina, and she is the giving director. And Katie, maybe first just share a little bit about your role if people don't know what you do before we get into some of the questions we had planned.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Katie. We're located in Anderson, South Carolina. So that's our broadcast campus. We have 14 campuses around the state, and I have been on staff for 17 years. So I've been here a while, kind of seen it all. I'm sure everybody has a NewSpring story that they've heard. And so, yeah, I work with our campus pastors and our lead team and just help them disciple givers. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. So one of the things we wanted to ask you, you have a unique perspective with the size church you have and working with so many campus pastors, et cetera. I'd love to hear from you what trends or challenges you're seeing over the past and have seen over the past 12 to 18 months regards to COVID, maybe at NewSpring, and maybe how you're dealing with that as well. Like, what are some of the ways you guys have found that has worked in the midst of some of the challenges as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, we all got hit with the challenge of COVID, and I know that I'm looking at where everybody is from, and everybody has a different state. So South Carolina, we're super conservative. So we also were hit with the, nobody wanted to wear a mask, or, everybody is vaccine versus not vaccine. Then you have a level of we want diversity or we don't want diversity. And so we were kind of hit with all of that over the past 12 or 18 months. And giving, I think, looked a lot like it did at other churches. We had less people giving, but giving more. So our offering has stayed about the same. We were up a little bit, which is awesome. But I think the best way to describe it, I talked to a guy that is in one of our business leader roundtables here, and he is over several Walmarts in the area. And I was asking him trends. This was, a little bit into COVID. And he said, we have less customers, but bigger baskets. And so they have less people buying more. And so I said, that's exactly, what we have here. We have our people who are stepping in and maybe feeling the weight of ministry a little bit more since we weren't able to meet. And then we have, in America, I think people who were making money ended up making more money. And the people who weren't making a lot of money, a lot of them lost their jobs. So it's very indicative of, the culture, the environment that we're in.
Yeah, makes sense. So what are some strategies that you have found have worked, like especially in your role, like giving director? Have you found some unique things that you've done or you guys have done that maybe you didn't do before COVID?
So with giving, I mean, we all know that everybody on this call knows there's not a silver bullet. There's not if you do this one strategy, all your giving is going to go up and to the right. It really is about authenticity and caring about people. And they know whether you cared about them before COVID or after. And it's not too late to start, obviously. But when COVID first hit, it was just reaching out to our people, checking in on them. We didn't have, who was coming through our doors. So it made us get outside of our offices and, check on people, not in their homes, but calling them in their homes, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it just made us kind of rethink. It's not about preaching on money on a certain day or doing a certain series on a certain day. So we started creating more of a culture of giving versus topical. Jesus preached on money more than anything else, money and possessions, but he didn't just stop and say, okay, for the next book of the Bible, it's all going to be about money. It was just a part of his culture, as a part of what he was thinking, what the people around him were thinking, which is the way we all work. I mean, the spirit of mammon is real, but it hides itself within what we're dealing with on a daily basis. So it's our job to call that out within messages and within emails and within, blog posts or however you're reaching your people. So we definitely shifted in that direction mid-year last year, where I became part of our teaching team. Not that I teach, but I help them develop the messages and making sure that, if we're doing a women's series and we talk about Mary, who gave an extravagant offering, and then we talk about the widow's mite, who gave everything that she had. I mean, these are two important women that can be a part of the women's series without doing a money series. If we're doing a marriage series, the number one reason people get a divorce is because of money. So that should be a piece of the marriage series. So we just found that integrating it into what we're already doing, instead of having a, 5 or 6 years ago, I would present a calendar. We're going to preach on money the last Sunday in January, the first Sunday in May. We've all done those things. And now it's just people can sniff out that inauthenticity. That's not a word. If you're not authentic, disingenuine, so it's just making it a part of who we are. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but with our pastors and our lead team, what I do is just present information to them. Mm-hmm. And we as a team, so it's 14 guys, and then we have 5 guys on our lead team. We just make sure that our givers have a relationship with somebody. So it's not that we're all jockeying for, I want a relationship with this guy or I want a relationship with this woman. It's all of us working in team, making sure that every giver has a pastor and a shepherd in their life to help them learn how to give and learn how their resources, whether the lack of resources or their influx of resources, can leverage or limit their relationship with Jesus. So it's my job to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. If we have a giver, I'm making sure they're connected to somebody, but somebody might, have more in common with me than their campus pastor, or they might have something more in common with their lead team member than their campus pastor. So just making sure that everybody's connected in some way.
Yeah, that's great. So I heard several things. I'm going to recap, and you can correct me if I misheard anything. So you guys were already connecting with people, but you really amped that up, right? You're connecting, following up with people, which, like you said, that's a timeless principle, right? That's what we teach and what you guys teach, connecting with people and helping people, showing them that you care, right? That's all key with giver engagement. But then also, you guys, instead of doing as many sermon series on money and stewardship and giving, you just built it into your sermons anytime you had the opportunity throughout the year, part of the culture. I remember Robert Morris said, someone asked him how often he teaches on giving or stewardship, and he said every week, but I never teach a series on money or stewardship, right? It's just part of who he is. And so anytime he teaches on something that's related to it, he calls that out, right? Where he makes that connection. That's great. And then the last thing that I heard, and this is really interesting, you're able to, by influence, to help your teaching team to see those opportunities for that too. And as being part of the teaching, the message preparation process, right? You're able to have some influence there. So people that are on this webinar, that could be an opportunity for you, to be able to potentially have some influence on how often money, stewardship, generosity is taught or mentioned in sermons. If you could potentially lend a hand and help with that.
Right. And it's not just, I know, I've talked to several giving directors or stewardship pastors, and it's, there might be a disconnect between the person on stage and your job and we would love to talk about money every single week, right? Because that's what we do and that's what we're passionate about. Right. And so even if you're not able to help plan sermons, which is a gift here that they allow me to help them do that, but you can also give feedback afterwards. You can help with what we call family time. When our campus pastors are hosting the service and they're speaking to giving, one of the things that I make sure they do is run through the 5 reasons people give, which is, I'm sure that we all know, but people give because of need, vision, emotion, relationship, and obedience. And anyone who speaks on giving is going to end up speaking their own language. Like, I give because of obedience. So if I'm talking to people, that's what I'm going to be giving, speaking towards. And so helping the campus pastors or whoever's teaching on stage to know that you've got to hit 2 or 3 of those every time you're speaking, because a husband and a wife might not speak the same language, or they may not give because of the same reason. So, we have some campus pastors that tell stories every single week, and that's awesome. for people who give because of emotion, but some people are just sitting in the seat saying, okay, well, how much do you need? You know, I'm ready to give. You just haven't told me how much you need. So there's several ways any guys or ladies on this call that can help with just making sure to keep those reasons in front of the speaker, and just pointing out, you know, in a positive way, giving feedback on the sermons, even if you're not able to help prep them to begin with.
Sure. And we had someone in the chat ask if you could repeat those 5 things again really quick. They were trying to write them down.
So people give because of need. You know, that's your campaign givers. Like, we're trying to raise, we just did our overflow offering. I'm sure lots of people did Christmas offerings. And you have a dollar amount, that's the thermometer. You know, people give because of obedience. The Bible says to give 10%. We give 10%. They give because of vision. We're casting vision on where your church is going, how you're reaching your community. They give because of emotion. That is your stories of your student ministry, your stories of how you give money away to missions, and outside your church, or, you know, baptism stories, salvation stories. And then people give because of relationship, and that is just based on whether it's me, our lead team, our campus pastors. They have a relationship with someone they give because they trust them, and that takes time and that takes authenticity. So yeah, and usually the key to that is whenever you're having a meeting or you're talking to someone and you only have one spouse in the room, you may speak to them because of need, but then the other spouse might be the one that actually gives online or writes the checks, and you haven't spoken to why they should be involved. And this is not a manipulative tactic. This is the way God has wired us to fund his kingdom. So this is not how can I speak to this person to manipulate them into giving more money? This is, how has God wired you? Because he's given us all the resources we need, or he needs, to fund his kingdom. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Okay, so if we start thinking about more specifics, like into analytics or segments of givers, how are you guys, and you've touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask this question in case it surfaces some other thoughts you have to share. How are you guys engaging new and lapsed givers, or people who have decreased their giving, for example, in your current environment? I know you mentioned following up with people as a key for, you know, all of them, but I'd love to hear how you're engaging those particular groups of givers.
Yeah, so we have always sent first-time giver communication. That is just something that I feel like is baseline. Everybody should be doing, just like you would contact a first-time kid or a first-time family, just like you would greet people as they come in the door for the first time. We always need to be communicating with our first-time givers, especially in a larger church. If they haven't dropped a kid off in our kids ministry, or they haven't visited a first-time area, giving might be the first time that they've heard from anyone. And so we've done, 17 years is a long time. So we've done things like write letters, send form letters, and things like that. But what we found is the most helpful, I guess, is an email. And it's very short. We don't need to cast lots of vision. I mean, they get it. They're giving. They gave for the first time. They just want to know, did you see me and do you care? A lot of people are like, oh, I just, gave $20 in this really large church. Does that even matter? Do they even keep books,
Right.
So it's like, hey, and it's sent from our campus pastor. In the past, it was sent from me. We've sent things from lead team members before, but it really goes well if we want our campus pastors to be the pastor and shepherd of our people in their cities, for it to start with them. And so it's like, hey, Riley Cummings, he's our Anderson campus pastor. Hey, my name's Riley. This is my cell phone number. Thank you so much for taking a step into our church and a step with your walk with the Lord. If you ever need anything, I'm here, and I hope to meet you on a Sunday. Very simple. And a lot of times, because we do email, they may just have a question about our student ministry, or I want to sign up for a class. It doesn't have anything to do with money, but now they have that @newspring.cc address that they can just then reply. And the reason that emails are great is because they can reply. If you send a handwritten note, that's super special, but they don't sit down and write you back. Right. And then some campus pastors have started trending towards texting first-time givers, and that works just as well. So that is one thing that if you want to try that. We reserve the handwritten notes for more of a thank you for giving consistently, or something more special, like thank you for giving to a special offering, to make it more like a keepsake or more intentional. communication.
Mm-hmm.
And then with our lapsed givers, we actually use Mortarstone for this. So we get a trigger. I get a trigger every day with anybody who hasn't given in the last 75 days. And this is something that Brent, you probably set this up for me because I'm terrible at technology, but we want to make sure that they haven't completely left our church. We want to see they kind of have 1 foot out, 1 foot in, because we all know money is the last thing to come, but the first thing to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do is I get a list of everybody who gave consistently, 5 times out of 6 months, any dollar amount, but they haven't given in the last 75 days. So hopefully they're kind of still around, kicking the tires. And then what I do is I'll look each one of them up. And the reason I do it every day is so that I'm not getting this exhaustive list of 100 people at the end of every month, because nobody can do anything with that.
Right.
And then I sort through the 5 to 10 that we might be getting. And, sometimes their credit card expired. So I just shoot them a message. Hey, just wanted you to know your credit card expired. Sometimes there's already a note. We use Rock as our database system. Sometimes there's already a note that they've moved.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really nothing else to be done. But
Mm-hmm.
anybody else, I can then look and see, are they still volunteering? Are their kids still attending? And I try to send all of that information to our campus pastors and say, hey, I've noticed that Brent was giving consistently. And he hasn't given since, December, November. His kids also haven't checked back in. And so what then the campus pastor does is they're going to look at, do I have a relationship with Brent? If I have never talked to Brent, it's really dumb for me to pick up the phone and call him and say, why are you not giving?
Right.
But what I can do is maybe shoot Brent a text and say, hey, I'm praying for you. Is there anything going on in your life? In a less direct way, or I want to invite you to this new series. Another thing that we can do is get our Kids Spring director, which is what we call our kids ministry, to invite Brent's kids back to church.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we've seen is once the kids come back, a month or 2 later, then the money comes back. So it's not about the money. The money is just an indicator or a red flag of something else. And because at NewSpring, the only people that see giving are me and our campus pastors and our lead team, there's a responsibility that goes with that.
Sure.
So we need to make sure that, they may have just had a baby. They may have lost their job. They may be having marriage issues. So there's all kinds of things that surface from this communicating to people who have stopped giving. And it's never about the money. And we're always able to shepherd them well. In many, many cases, not even mentioning that they haven't given. So.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So do you mentioned lapsed givers. Do you also look at people whose giving has decreased, but maybe they haven't stopped giving yet?
We regularly do not do that. I've been doing this so long, I'll look at the names all the time and can kind of see.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you were just starting out, you should automate that and somehow, get that information from Mortarstone. We do have things like re-engaged givers. I get triggers for people who haven't given in 12 months and then give again, or haven't given in 24 months and give again. I don't have anything automated right now that'll show me, they gave $100 a month and now they're giving, $50 a month. However, I do look for any kind of anomalies. I'm always just looking at that. And that's what I tell the campus pastors, like, this is my full-time job. You have a full-time job. So I'm here to do all the grunt work and help you be equipped to pastor your people. So if I see someone gave $100 a month and then all of a sudden they drop $800, to me, that's the widow's mite. Something has happened in their life that has sparked this gift.
Right.
And so it's our job to either celebrate with them, mourn with them if it's an inheritance or something that's happened. So any kind of anomaly that anybody listening can look for, and anything that Mortarstone can help make that easy for you to find is super important.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. So let's talk about, we talked about lapsed givers, new givers, people who have decreased, and you touched on those who have increased as well. Are you guys also using Mortarstone or engaging with your core givers and your top givers? I'd love to hear just kind of best practices or how you do that.
We do. So our campus pastors have a list of things they do every quarter that we check off together. One second. I promise I don't have COVID. Just a really bad cough. I feel like I have to say that all the time nowadays. So
well, we're safe on Zoom, so it's okay.
That's true. You can't. Yeah. Okay. So we have always thanked our top givers again, in an authentic way. We don't just, you give 10 grand, we thank you. We want to make sure that we're knowing these people and things that are going on, because they could also volunteer. They might also have kids in our kids ministry. But we are thanking them on a rotating basis. So I encourage our campus pastors to thank people, whether it be our core givers who are just giving consistently, which that's what really makes up our church. We don't have a lot of these higher end. I mean, we live in South Carolina. This is not Anderson, South Carolina is not New York City. So
right.
We just have a lot of, Matt, my husband, Matt and Katie, that we both work. We have 3 kids. I mean, that's just what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we tithe, and that's something to be celebrated. And that's what makes up our church. So making sure that our campus pastors are thanking them. Once a year, they need to hear from you that you're, thankful that they're giving consistently. And then we also thank our higher end givers. A lot of them don't volunteer. So we're also shepherding them into getting more plugged into our church. And one of the focuses this year, that I'm actually putting together a presentation. This is what I was doing before, that I'm going to present to our lead team next week. For 2022, one of the things we want to do is, I've looked in Mortarstone, and through a lot of our data, we see that 28% of our givers, or people who are giving, are tithing. So, and there's really no way to know if somebody's tithing or not unless you go home and look at their, pay stubs. But what I can do is look at the annual South Carolina income, and anybody who's giving more than 10% of the annual South Carolina income. Because again, Anderson's different than Charleston, than Myrtle Beach, than Greenwood. So we have a lot of rural areas and we have a lot of urban areas. But if I take the average, if only 28% of our people are actually tithing, then not only do we want to get more givers in and keep our back door as, cracked as possible, because you're always going to have a back door where people are leaving. Sure. But we want to move. We actually have 31% of our people are giving just under that. And so we want to move those people into the bucket of tithing. So we call them here tippers, tithers, and people who are being generous. So my whole plan for this year is to move our tippers into tithers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. You've talked about a lot of Mortarstone and how you use it, but I just want to ask this question in case there's anything else that you're using you haven't mentioned yet. So is there anything else that you use Mortarstone for that you haven't mentioned, or maybe somebody else on the team uses it for outside of your role, or any reports or triggers that you haven't mentioned so far?
That we use Mortarstone for? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Not yet. Mortarstone can do a lot of things, but I haven't utilized all of them yet.
Well, part of this, I'm guessing at your size and scope of NewSpring and how many campuses, just doing a few triggers really well can take a lot of your time, right?
Keeps me busy. Yeah. I mean, again, I get 4 emails every morning, all of our first time givers, all of our stopped givers, our re-engaged givers for 12 months, and our re-engaged givers for 24 months or more. So, I mean, that's a big chunk of my day.
Yeah. Well, that represents a lot of people too, whereas a smaller church could do that once a week or once a month and cover it pretty well, but then maybe do more triggers, have more things going on.
One of the things I did this morning, actually, because we're nearing the end of January, so we're all looking at how much money did we bring in January. So I ran a report through Mortarstone a couple hours ago with anybody who had given to our overflow offering, which is our end of the year offering, who has then not yet tithed or given to our general offering in January. So it's a list of people that I sent our camp. Then I can break it up by campus, so it's more bite-sized for them. And say, here's your group of people, to tell them, like, it's awesome. We raised $3.5 million in our overflow offering to get our Aiken campus into their permanent facility, which is phenomenal. But the way we're going to accomplish our vision is just consistent obedience every single month. And so, helping them see, like, this group of people right here, the joy that they feel that they gave to overflow, that joy is on offer for them every single month to be a part of something. So I did get that from Mortarstone. Yeah,
that's great. That's awesome. All right. Well, I think I've asked enough questions. Why don't we turn it to our attendees and let them ask questions? So Nikki, I'll hand it to you. There's probably been a few questions already, but I'll just let everyone know this is your chance. If you have a question you'd like to ask Katie, go ahead and put it in the chat and we'll try to get to it.
Yeah, thanks everybody for putting these in the chat window. So keep them coming because they've been great questions. So we'll start at the top here. First one is, are there any other examples that you've used to talk about giving? You mentioned about Mary, but are there other ones that you use regularly?
I mean, they're all throughout the Bible. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's because of the way God wired me, or just been doing this for so long. I see it in everything. You know, we were in teaching team last week planning for our men's series. So we did a women's series in the fall. We're doing a men's series this winter. And Brad's going to be, Brad Cooper, one of our lead pastors, is going to be preaching on the rich young ruler. And so, you know, we're talking about how, you know, Jesus, anyway, I'm not going to start, but you know, like if you're talking about men and you talk about Zacchaeus, there's all these different examples that you can pull in that people struggle with money and possessions then. And just the difference between Zacchaeus and the difference between the rich young ruler, that Zacchaeus was willing to lay it all down, and the rich young ruler just didn't really want to give that last piece up yet. He was, you know, willing to lay everything else down. So it's just looking at, what do we want the men of our church to think? And because I have that, I guess, vision, or I'm looking in that way, I can add that into whatever we're speaking about. But yeah, I mean, it's money and possessions are everywhere in the Bible.
Yeah, I'll jump in there too. I've heard people say there's over 1,300 scriptures on money and stewardship. I think Howard Dayton said there's over 2,000 verses in the Bible that deal with money, stewardship, generosity, or possessions. And in fact, if you guys don't have it, if you don't know about it, there's a couple great resources out there. There's the Stewardship Bible. Howard Dayton wrote a or was part of a Stewardship Bible as well. I think there's an NIV version and an ASV version, but then there's also, I believe it was Howard Dayton or Larry Burkett wrote a little book or reference book called The Word on Money. I believe that's what it's called. But they basically go through and highlight the 2,000 plus scriptures that deal with any of those areas. So those can be some great resources for you too, if you'd like to just go pick one of those up, and then you've got it at your fingertips.
I mean, a lot of it, I think, is just we've all read the Bible. So I think we just haven't seen it the way it's there. Yeah. Like, you know, at Christmas time, we read the story of the wise men, and they brought Jesus gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Yeah. Well, you know, they brought their offerings to the king. So the kings of the earth brought their offering to the Lord. And then Mary and Joseph needed those resources to be able to move. And so it's all there. We just haven't had the lens, I guess, to see it that way. And we just need to see how to make sure that we're uncovering that for our people as we're teaching them about the Bible.
Right. Exactly.
Great answer there. Okay. So the next one came up a couple times, and you touched on it a little bit before, and maybe Brent, you could jump in on this one, but are there general good amounts for looking at a decreased giving record? Like if you're looking at somebody that's potentially going to lapse, is there something that they can look at for that? And I know in Waterstone, we obviously track that. So Brent, you might be able to jump in there.
Yeah, Katie, if you're okay, I'll go first, and then you can add any perspective that you have from your role at NewSpring. But on our dashboard has a great report of givers who are at risk of lapsing. That's one of the first things I think of, and it shows weekly givers, biweekly, irregular, that kind of thing. So that's not necessarily a certain amount, but it's built based on some of our other reports to show giving households that are at risk of lapsing. And that's based on their giving going down or becoming less regular, which Katie, you touched on that earlier. So that's one thing. But then we also have some other reports, like with core givers, top givers specifically. You can look at what we call lagging givers. And so that is showing people who are giving less than the prior time period. And so it's less about a certain amount, but we have some of those reports pre-built for you to start identifying those. That's how I would answer that, as far as what to look for, how to utilize what we already have built for you. But you can certainly start setting some custom thresholds if you'd like in the household report, you know, if you'd like to look at a certain amount. Anything to add there from your perspective, Katie?
No, I mean, you're the expert. I really do think it's just looking at, I think it could be overwhelming if you're looking at it for the first time and it's just numbers, all these numbers. And I'm not a numbers person at all, which I started when I started here in the accounting department, and they love to give me a hard time because I didn't understand debits and credits and which one goes on the right or the left or whatever. But it's really about the people, and money just tells a story about their life. And $100 to me might be this, giving $100 less every month might be the same as Brent giving $1,000 less every month. So it's really not about the amount. It's what does this indicate that's going on? And you can look at, every state is different. The income of your area is different. So it just takes looking at it and looking at not, this is $500 a month, but this is the Smith family. What does their family look like? Where do they work? And knowing them and knowing, their trends and caring about them and not, is it $525 a month or $475 a month or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, one other thing I'll share too, another report that could be helpful in Mortarstone is the giving band movement chart. And it will actually, again, it's not a certain dollar amount necessarily, but it shows, I guess it is in a sense, but it's more about the giving bands and ranges. It will show someone, a family, a household, for example, that was a top giver, a band 5 giver, and they actually went down to a band 4, band 3 giver. So that's a significant amount, if you will. It's more based on a percentage or the range. But again, it's a report that's already built for you that you could look at.
Great. All right. So another question that came in a couple times is we've got a few churches that in their bylaws, they're not allowed to look at giving, and only a certain person or a volunteer is allowed to see that. So are there any ideas on how to work with different campus pastors on giving, but not be able, even though they can't see the giving? How do they talk about giving if they can't see the giving or the giver?
So I would say, I think it goes back to who's making that call. I know it's in the bylaws, but understanding why it's important to see where people's hearts are, because the Bible says where your treasure is, there your heart will be. And it's not I know that money, it's a very tricky, personal thing. And so what we do is making sure that people know that it's only me and the campus pastors and our lead team, and we establish that trust with them. And then, so one of the things we do for our directors, which is one level beneath our campus pastors, is they cannot see whether Brent and I are giving. But what they can know, one of the things we tell our directors is, let's say they are in charge of all of our Fuse student ministry leaders, which is our, Fuse is our student ministry. So what I could tell them is like, hey, 25% of your leaders are giving. I'm not going to tell you who they are, how much they are giving, but 25% of them are giving. So what you can do in your huddles as you're shepherding them is like, what their challenge to their Fuse leaders are, hey guys, by the end of this year, we want to be 50% of us, we want to be giving. And so I'm telling you why I give. I want you to tell why you give. Let's share our stories with each other and help challenge each other to step in and take that next step of obedience. So maybe that's something, if you can't see giving, or if your campus pastors cannot see giving, maybe you can see if you're allowed to see a percentage of people who are giving, or and the smaller you can make that, like breaking it down by area or city is better. But even if it's just 12% of our people are tithing, saying that and challenging people to step in and watch that percentage increase. But it is hard to pastor people if you don't know if they're giving. And I know there's been, I've gotten all the hate from years of doing this, like, you shouldn't be able to see this. But we do see when people are volunteering. We do see when people are using other gifts that the Lord has given them. And so money in America is just more of a personal issue. And so just showing that we're not after your money, we're after you following the Lord and hearing from him. And that just, I guess that's created over time. I'm not sure if that was helpful or if I answered the question, because that would be really difficult to do my job if I couldn't see the giving.
Yeah, I agree. I'm an elder at my local church, and I can see the giving. Like, we know that I agree with you. Our elders and our ministers and pastors, we agree that that's a sign of their spiritual maturity, right? So we need to be able to see that. But I also understand for some others, they're not comfortable with it yet, or it may be a process for them to become comfortable with it. Some things I would add to that too is, you can see giving bans or allow people to see giving bans, for example, without seeing the individual giving amounts or knowing that they're a new giver, or that they, grew or graduated from a band 4 to a band 5 giver, or how many of those households there are. So there are ways to set our triggers in reporting access where, let's say a pastor says, I don't want to know what a particular household gives. Okay, well, we can let you see though where they are in the spectrum of their spiritual growth. So there's some things that you can do as well, and we can help you with ways to see some of the giving data without necessarily seeing it all. I agree. I would prefer and recommend seeing it all because you need to know where they really are. But if someone's not ready for that yet, they could at least see some trends, if you will, right? And seeing people in general moving forward or backward in their giving without necessarily seeing the dollar amount.
And I would just encourage you, if you have any influence with anybody in leadership, to explain to them the things that seeing someone's giving helps with. And, it does help me see that there might be something going on in their home that nobody else would notice, that they did lose a job, that they are having marriage issues, or that they had a baby and we just didn't know, but their giving is an indicator of something good or bad.
Sure. These are leading indicators of ministry opportunities, right?
Right.
That's really what we're talking about here, and signs of spiritual growth or spiritual issues that are happening.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Yeah, and I think what you said at the beginning of this webinar, as far as it's a culture of giving at NewSpring, is really important. So if you can't get granular with Mortarstone, I think it's important that you just weave giving into everything that you're doing at the church, so it does become that that culture that you were talking about to start out with. So great. Yeah, great answers, guys. We've got a lot of questions coming in, which is great. The next one is real quick, because we did already talk about this one, but just go through the 5 reasons one more time.
Those are really popular.
Yeah, you're great. Yeah.
I hope it's helpful. Need, vision, emotion, relationship, and obedience.
Perfect. Okay. And I'll include those in our follow-up email, like as a recap, because so people have that. Yeah. Okay. So another one that came in is, what are the different ways that people can give at NewSpring? And what's your most preferred method, or what's the most preferred method?
I don't have a preferred method. I just want them to give, because I want it to be easy for them, but also I want it to help them worship, because that's a piece of it. So you can give online, you can give through ACH. Again, I'm not the financial side of this. You can give by check, you can give by cash. You can automate your giving, you can schedule it. And we don't have a certain, I would say like 80% of our people give online. There's not a lot of check writers, but if you don't want it to be 100%, because you've got business checks coming in, you've got stock gifts coming in. So we don't put like on our campus pastors, we want you to have 50% of your people scheduling their gifts, because do 50% of the people receive the same amount of money every week? Because I don't know that that's true. Right. So we just want to make sure trends are going up, and that, there's not a big gaping hole somewhere. But we just can't, ACH, our fees are lower. The finance people, they tell me that all the time, like, let's push to ACH, but you can give on our app, you can give online, all the normal ways.
Great. And do you accept crypto or asset-based gifts? You said something about stocks, but were there any more of these modern kind of new ways to give?
I can get that information if somebody wants to know about crypto. We did have somebody inquire about it, but I don't think they ever did it, but we can. We have set it up that you can do it. It's not on our website, I don't think yet. But yes. And then you can donate, non-cash gifts. There's a lady right now talking about donating some silver. And so we're just kind of working through, how to do that. So yeah, you can donate things. We've had cars, other stuff.
Great. So it's good that you're giving, there's a wide range of gifts, right? You're not saying no. You're saying, yes, we can handle this and we can figure it out. That's great. Okay. Mortarstone question for you and Brent. Can you share the 4 triggers that you have set up daily that you're using?
I have set up first time givers, anybody who gives for the first time. someone who hasn't given for 75 days and they used to be consistent. So they gave 5 times out of 6 months and then nothing for 75 days. And then I have 2 more. That's anybody who hasn't given in 12 months or more, and then anybody who hasn't given in 24 months or more. Those were custom for our church. Brent, I know, and his team have a ton that you could just choose from just to get started. We kind of joined Mortarstone after I had been doing this for a while, so I already knew what I wanted to see. So I'm sure he has better ones.
I don't know that they're better, but we have Joe Glenn does a great job on our team helping churches when they get started with Mortarstone to set up, depending on the size and experience level of the church, it's usually 3 to 5 triggers to help them get started. And he typically does, some of them overlap with what you're saying. He typically does first time new givers, first time, second time, and third time givers, to make sure and thank them, because we find that the more often you thank those new givers, the better the retention level is. And then we certainly look at lapsed givers, people who haven't given in a certain amount of time or more. And then a lot of times he'll work with the church to do something. He'll have a recommendation, but this can be customized based on the church size, but someone who gives a certain dollar amount or more in a particular time frame. And that's getting to making sure and thanking a core giver or top giver, because that could be missed. They're not necessarily a new giver. So those are some of our standard ones that we recommend if someone's new to this and new to Mortarstone to get started with. And then they can certainly grow and get more sophisticated from there. A couple of the triggers you mentioned, I would call more sophisticated triggers. So.
Well, and I look at giving all day. I have it pulled up. And so, I mean, not like literally staring at it all day, but I'm checking it all the time. If you are not able to do that, then I would have, anybody who gives over a certain dollar amount, then I would definitely have that sent to me.
Mm-hmm.
I am that trigger here.
Yep.
Along those lines, besides those 4 triggers, is there any other reports in Mortarstone that you're looking at that really give you insight into how to disciple financially?
Mainly, like, anytime there's multi-levels of things that I'm looking like they gave during this time period and not this time period. I mean, during COVID, we were using, who stopped giving in March of 2020 and hasn't given since.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always plugging in different things. Like I said this morning, using who gave to a Christmas offering versus not general. So that kind of varies as if someone brings up, because every campus pastor's got an idea, right? And they're like, hey, I want to see who gave during this week of the year and not, so Mortarstone's easy for me to just kind of plug those dates in, plug those funds in. It also gives you the age. And so like the one I did this morning, I deleted everybody who was 21 and under. I think there's tags in there. I don't use the tags. I can do that in Rock where I look at just our leaders. So I'm looking at volunteers and leaders giving. Do y'all have that though, that people can use?
Yes, we do. We have tags, and depending on the church management system, sometimes we can import those tags in as well. So if you have them set up in your church management system, sometimes we can pull those in, or you can set up tags in Mortarstone specifically as well. So yeah.
I mean, you can measure anything, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. Jumping back to those 5 reasons that you gave that have been really popular, is this something that you guys incorporate into your weekend services, that kind of language?
This isn't something that we, announce from the stage, like stand up if you give because of obedience, or stand up because you give, because of need. It's just a lens that I use to help them frame what they're saying. One of the things, we have worship arts directors at each campus, and they make sure, like back in the day, I used to get a copy of every campus pastor's host moment, and I would watch all of them. It's 3 to 5 minutes. That is very time consuming. And so what I've done now is just train our worship arts directors to listen to the host moments every weekend as they're talking about giving. And then there's not the first Sunday of the month, you have to talk about emotion. The second Sunday of the month, you have to talk about need, because you don't want to limit, because it's a different host every week. We cycle through 3 or 4 of them, but they're going to talk out of what's in their heart. And so instead of restricting them in that way, we just make sure in a 4-week period during the month, they're hitting all 5 of them. And then every week you're hitting 2 or 3 of them, because you can talk about 2 or 3 at a time. So it's just making sure they're there and one of them doesn't get lost. So it's the same thing with the sermons, just making sure we're hitting several of them at one time. But we probably use that language in smaller settings, but I don't know that we would tell our people, again, because it's not a manipulative thing. It's, knowing who your people are. So in the bands of giving that Brent has talked about, once you start diving into that, you can tell why a certain person gives. So if I know somebody gives because of emotion or missional giving, I'm going to send them a story about what's happening when we give away some of our money to a local pregnancy center. If somebody's giving because of obedience, I'm going to send them a stat that says 28% of our givers are tithing. I'm going to know what pricks their heart to help them just stay more engaged with our church. So it's also just, you can tell somebody, like, I know this about you, but I don't know that we put it on a poster and share it with people.
Okay. And along those lines, another question came in that's more specific to financial transparency, but they're asking how public should they be with the staff and leaders about investor development processes or other types of financial investments that the church is making. How transparent are your finances with givers?
I don't understand the investment. I'm not sure what they're asking.
And I think it's about financial transparency overall, like what the church is doing.
Yeah, we go through an audit annually. We publish it. It's open for anybody who wants to see it. We used to print it out, hand it out, and we realized nobody really cared, or they couldn't understand it because they were probably like me. But we are super transparent with, this is how much goes to staffing. We don't say this is each staff member's salary, but we do have HR costs. We give away 10% of everything that comes in. So 10% is given away. This is operational cost. We started 5 years ago, and we have 4 basic principles. We're not taking on any new debt. We are working on getting out of debt. That's one of what we have is called Vision 2030. So by the year 2030, we want to be out of debt, which we're hoping to be out of by the end of this year. So God has really blessed us to be able to do that. We take our cash flow, and anything that's in our cash flow at the end of every month, we split between campus expansion and getting out of debt. And then we give away 10% of everything that comes in. So we're very transparent that this is what we do. It's very simple. We recite it a lot. This is our vision. Our Vision 2030 is, I left that part out, is to get all of our campuses into a permanent home, get out of debt, and plant 10 churches by the year 2030. And those are non-NewSpring campuses, so to send people out to plant a church. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're going. People give more towards where you're going than where you've been. They want to know that they're a part of something that's moving, that's alive. And so we do want to build trust by telling people what we've given towards, but we always want to tell people where we're going. So we're pretty transparent. You could come in and we would show you everything. We would not show you individual salaries. But we really don't have a lot of that people ask. We will say this is how much we spend on HR costs. We we have an annual report that we have that shows all the different things that we've given to. We have town halls is what we call them. We don't really have a better name. If y'all have a better name, I would love a better name. But what we call them is town halls, where we invite in givers and volunteers in groups of 20 to 30 every month to meet with our campus pastors, and we share all this information with them. This is where we're going. This is what we've done. It's open for Q&A. It's just not something that is appropriate to say from the stage, but we're not hiding it. We just don't have an avenue to say these types of things. So it's like a business meeting that anybody can come to. And one of the things we've thought about doing this year is inviting our first-time givers to that and just saying that it's on the 4th Sunday of every month. You're welcome to come. So yeah, we're pretty transparent.
Great. Okay, we have 9 minutes left, and there's just questions coming in, which is great. People are really interested in how everything.
All right, I talk way too much too.
It's fantastic. No, it's totally fantastic. Real quick, you mentioned the different ways that NewSpring gives. Have you guys? We've had a couple churches ask this recently because they're looking into it. Do you guys accept Venmo at all?
We don't.
You don't yet. Okay. All right. So there we go. Next is. A lot of questions are coming in about planned gifts. Do you have a plan for planned gifts? Do you discuss this? Do Do you talk to givers about this? Is this something you're educating them on? And how do you do that? So that kind of lumps in all the questions coming in about.
Yeah. So we've looked into a couple of different organizations and we're still deciding what to do. We've thought about doing something locally with the local attorney and then paying the local attorney to do it. We've looked into the larger organization. So it's a part of our discussion without going into pros and cons of each one. We're trying to find what fits us best. I think it's important, but I think it's important that it's a service for other people and not just a way to get money from them. But I mean, I think the stat is like 60 or 80% of the people don't have wills. My dad was an attorney, so I was taught have a will as soon as you're born, So I'm learning that not everybody else does that. And so it is on the discussion or it's on the table. We're just trying to figure out which direction to go in.
Great. All right, let's see. Since we have a few minutes left, let me see if I can find just the last couple ones. How much information?
While you're looking real quick,
Yeah.
I want to mention to our attendees, if they don't know, we have a Mortarstone Slack channel that they can go in and talk with each other and ask each other questions and best practices. The reason I mentioned that we're seeing lots of great conversation and questions. So I want to encourage people to continue that even outside of the webinar.
Absolutely. And I'll send the link out to join that in the email following this webinar with the recording so that you can just join and you can continue the conversation if you'd like. The next question is, again, it goes back to transparency and who knows what, but how much info do you share with the lead pastors at the church, your teaching team about top givers or your high capacity givers?
So our lead team can see giving. They're the elders of our church. Our teaching team is not our lead team, so they have no deciding ability, no decision-making ability. So Brad Cooper sits on both, so he is kind of the bridge between the two. So he's a lead pastor, and he's also one of our teaching team members. But the teaching team teach. That's what they do. That's the way God's gifted them. So they carry the culture and direction of our church from the stage. But our lead team makes decisions, so they're the governing authority. And they are able to see giving. So they know everything I know.
Okay, great. This goes back to kind of like following up with those lapse givers and re-engaging, but how often do you do follow up with lapse givers?
Hopefully, as soon as I email the campus pastor, they are following up with that lapsed giver. So, as soon as I see it, I let them know. And again, but it's in a real way. We look to see the best way to contact them. It might be that, hey, I just saw them on Sunday. They're here every week. I'm going to make sure I see them in the lobby again and ask what's going on in their life. It might be, I haven't seen them in a while. I'm just going to check in with them. Or it might be, I'm going to invite their kid back. But as soon as the campus pastors are getting these people's names, it is then their responsibility to, even if it's throwing it back to me to do it, finding a way to contact this person.
Great. And do they report back to you on that to go that little further on that? Like, do you check in with those? Like, how is that follow-up continued?
So some of them do. And the reason they do is because we can measure it. If they email me back with what happened, then I can go into my inbox and kind of look to see, they contacted 10 out of 15. And because the other 5, there was another reason why there wasn't a reason to, kind of thing. And then we can measure 2 months later if they are giving again. In ROC, in our database system, they are required to make notes in there. So we have a stewardship tab that nobody else can see unless you have giving rights. So they're going to write that I contacted Brent because he stopped giving and this is what is happening. So again, I'll look at that note first to see what's happening. So we all kind of communicate well there in ROC. Not all of them, send me back an email. I contacted so-and-so. It's just a given that that's what they're supposed to do. So it really depends on if it's a newer campus pastor or if it's somebody that I trust that's been doing it forever.
Okay. Great. Sorry, Brent, go ahead.
No, I just said that's good. That's a great answer. I love how you're on top of it, basically, is what I'm hearing, right? And you're,
right.
Yep, That's your lane to equip them to be able to do it, but then you're also making sure it's happening too.
Yeah. And honestly, social media, people will tell you their whole life on social media. One of the places I go to is Facebook. If I see that Katie Bailey hasn't given, I'm going to go look at Katie. And if she's talking about another church, praise God and amen that they found somewhere that they can plug in. Or they may say, I might see a birth announcement. There's so many things that you can go ahead and find out about a person and care about them rather than cold calling them.
Right. Yeah. You can see if they've had a health issue or whatever, right? That's going on in your life. Yeah.
And even like on the other side, if somebody drops $20,000, that's the most random thing ever, and I go look at their Facebook page and someone has passed away, then we need to care about them and know that's why, not, hey, thank you for giving so much money to our church. That's not, it's not about the money for them. Right. So, I mean, Facebook will tell you what they ate for lunch. So you use it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, Nikki, I feel like I should probably cover just a couple of housekeeping things. And I feel like I want to honor everybody's time because we're almost at the end of the hour or top of the hour. So if you're not a Mortarstone user or subscriber, you can try it out free by going to our homepage. You can, and there's a place you can see on there that you can get started or try it out for free. You can do that, and our team will help you with that. Help you get your giving data connected so that you can see what it's like before you even buy. Second thing is we actually can help churches with non-cash giving, how to get your church ready for that. Also how to educate your leaders and your staff to be ready for that and to understand how it works. But then also we can help you educate your givers as well in that area. So there's several great organizations that can do that. And you can certainly work with a local attorney. Those are all great options, but we just want you to know we can help you with that as well if you need help getting started in that area. Nikki, do you have a recommendation if they're interested in that, the best way to reach out to us? Like I know we have live chat on the website, et cetera, but.
Yeah, we have all those. Yeah, immediately you could do live chat. We're on that all the time, too much actually. So you could reach out to us live chat, but I'll include that information in the follow-up email as well. This email is going to have a lot of good stuff in it. So make sure you open that up, but we'll have all the contact information for Kingdom Planning Strategies is who we use for our non-cash giving services. So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Nikki, I think we're at the end of the time. There may be more questions. If you have more questions, you can always let us know. Go to the live chat there as well, and we're happy to help you. I don't know if you want to do this or not, Katie, but do you mind sharing how they can get in touch with you too?
No, not at all. So my email is Katie, katie.bailey@newspring.cc. I mean, I will give you my cell number. I'm an open book, so you're welcome to email me, or just email me and I'll give you my cell number once you email me. But
there you go.
That's I've nothing to hide.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I hope you guys hear. I knew this about Katie. She loves to help other churches. She loves to help people at NewSpring, their members, their campus pastors, the staff, but she also loves to help other people that are doing what she does in their own local church. So she has a servant heart, and we really appreciate that. And Katie, thank you for joining us today too and investing your time in this webinar too.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.